What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we are ranking the albums of Vulvodynia. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, Vulvodynia tier list time. South African brutal slam, death metal, and deathcore band. And let's just dive right into it with the Lord of Plagues EP in 2014. These are songs that would later be reworked for Psychosadistic Design. Pretty raw, rough production. Vocals in particular sound pretty awful, to be honest. Kind of fun to see their beginnings, but wouldn't say it's really worth going back to, so I'm going to go ahead and put this at D tier. 2014, we've got Cognizant Castigation, and I gotta say it's been actually pretty neat to watch their career unfold from these relative humble beginnings here. They actually have a similar timeline as the Metal Trenches site, but anyways, I actually really enjoyed this album when it came out. It's just been a while since I had re-listened to it. I will say that it doesn't hold up quite as well, just given how much the band has developed since then, but it's still a pretty solid debut. It actually has maybe my favorite cover art of all of them, and I really like the sci-fi imagery on it, but it does feel pretty sparse and even generic in terms of the musicianship. Lots of pretty basic slams and guitar work overall leaves something to be desired. The vocals also don't really bring much to the table comparatively, with a lot of breeing that kind of gets stale pretty fast. It does have some guest appearances, including Jason of Ingested, so that's kind of cool. And again, not at all a bad album, especially for the first go at a full length, but not particularly amazing or memorable either. Unveiling the Abomination is probably the most standout track for me. Tesla has a pretty nice groove to it too, but I'm going to put this one at C tier. Next up, we have the Finis Omnium Ignorantium EP in 2015, and this felt like a pretty solid progression pretty fast. Similar ideas as the initial debut, but it feels like it has some improvements. This is easily also their best EP, and by the way, I'm not covering splits too, I'm just doing the EPs in the full length. It's actually notable in that this EP is a few seconds longer than Mob Justice, so we could almost consider it another album. Lots of solid guitar work, and again, the more technical side that I enjoy, except with improved songwriting overall. Favorite tracks here: Praenuntius Descends. The Bilderberg Extermination with the Beyond Deviation feature has a sick groove to it. I'd actually give this one an A. Honestly, this was where Vulvodynia really started to grab my attention in a big way, but let's continue on here to the aforementioned Psychosadistic Design in 2016, moving to Lacerated Enemy Records. Now, I will say right off the bat on this one that I was a little disappointed that they went for the more traditional gore and violence route on this album. Just seeing the cover made me groan a little, honestly, and the intro is downright cringeworthy. And honestly, this whole shock value approach just feels dated and hasn't appealed to me since I was a teenager. It had its place in the evolution and history of bands like Cannibal Corpse, and I still enjoy those albums, but in the post-2010s, I feel like we've progressed beyond it. Anyways, musically though, I will say that this is a slight improvement over those previous albums in some ways. Still nothing particularly amazing, but everything just feels kind of tightened up. The grooves get me bobbing my head more, and the blasts are pretty insane with the speed and the snare tone, but to be fair, they're still programmed drums at this point. The vocals also just feel a bit stronger and slightly more varied. I can hear him kind of developing his own style and coming into his own, and the parts where they layer the vocals sound really great. Speaking of which, the production in general sounds fuller, allowing songs to hit that much harder. Drowned in Vomit is a good one, especially with that classic Dexter sample.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Also King Amesis, which features Alex Terrible of Slaughter to Prevail. Grotesque Schizophrenia, despite the awful title, is also quite solid and features Martin from Cranium. Unparalleled Insubordination was the big video single, and I appreciate that it showed their willingness to not take themselves too seriously. I do feel like this album is missing some of the more technical flourishes of the earlier material, so kind of splitting the difference here, I would put this one at B tier. Alright, then we have the Anthropophagus EP in 2019. This is mostly just songs that are going to be on Mob Justice, more or less is what we get here. Notably, we do also have a real drummer on this album, making them a 5-piece at this point, and it sounds great. already a step up, but just 3 tracks. I'm going to put it at B tier and just move right into Mob Justice, because that's what we really want to talk about in 2019 as well. Still via Lacerated Enemy. Now, this was an album that, for whatever reason, I initially skipped over. I was probably just busy as it came out during the summer, and there tend to be like a lot of releases during that time. In any case, I really appreciate how they continue to focus and tighten their approach, with this one clocking in at just shy of 35 minutes. Less is definitely more, especially when it comes to most brutal death metal and deathcore. And unless you have a progressive or more experimental approach, you just end up repeating yourself, if you ask me. Conceptually, it's also more grounded in the day-to-day lives of the band, which gives it more of a genuine kind of personal touch that I appreciate. Solid mixture of traditional slam with some cool standout moments. The part around the halfway mark of Blood Diamond is pretty sick, with the harmonics transitioning into the hardcore vocals. I'd really like to hear more of this moving forwards. You wouldn't necessarily think those styles would fit, but here it's like perfect. Born into Filth also has some of these, courtesy of Alex Taylor of Malevolence, and then also bringing back more of those technical guitar flourishes that I enjoy so much. Trevor of the Black Dahlia Murder makes a welcome appearance on Reclaim the Crown Part 1. Solid track, just feels like another stamp of approval from the mainstream too. Cool to see them toying with more atmosphere also on Echoes of the Motherland, so I'm going to go ahead and give this one a nice solid A. And then that brings us to Praenuntius Infiniti in 2021 via Unique Leader Records, continuing the trajectory to becoming a little bit more overtly deathcore, I would say. Cool to see the sci-fi influences making a return both in the concept and the cover art. Nice little Easter egg too on the cover, with the torturer from Psychosadistic Design showing up in the crowd running away from the alien monster. Speaking of which, I really like the spooky sci-fi theremin sound on both parts of Banquet of Enigmatic Whores. Part 2 also has some sick machine gun archspire vocals from the man himself, Ollie. Just one of several more guest appearances. Praenuntius Ascends is a throwback to Praenuntius Descends from Finis Omnium Ignorantiam. Eternal Wasteland of Galaxies was one of my early favorites, with its just sickening, infectious groove. Some more big atmospheric moments here too, more so than I'd say on any previous album, so I'm interested to see where they continue to go with that. Lots of fun little clinky like harmonics and slides, although sometimes they overdo it. Even the more kind of simplistic head bobbers like Ravenous Revolution and A Cosmic Betrayal do a good job of getting me moving. Overall, I like the direction that they're going, but it does fall a little bit short in terms of really gripping me the same way as some of the competition has this year. It also loses some of the focus of the previous album, moving back to nearly an hour in length, which just feels like way too much. I think they could have cut it down, but I will say that the musicianship feels stronger overall. Lots of killer solos and techie parts, even some great moments for the bass too. All said and done, I don't think they've fully reached their potential for that S-tier album just yet, but I have confidence that they have it in them. It's like if you combine the best elements of this and Mob Justice, you might just have it. Also, shout out to Exocrine if you want to hear a band just killing it with a similar vibe, but as far as this one goes, it's a high B tier for me. But now let me know down in the comments how would you rank these albums, and then check out my tier list playlist. If you like Vulvodynia, you'll probably be most interested in the one for Suicide Silence or Born of Osiris. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.